Hello and welcome to Take Back Time. There's people with the most interesting ideas and thoughts around productivity and how to help you to be more productive in what you do. So Kam Knight is here with us today, and he is a coach, writer, and author of several best-selling books, quite a few really amazing books in the area of mental performance, such as memory, concentration, and productivity. He's dedicated the last 15 years of his life to understanding the secrets of the mind and how to optimize its performance. And when he's not writing, he's globetrotting around the world, and he's traveled to nearly 100 countries around the world. So we're going to get some interesting stories here from Kam today. Kam, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Penny. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited to share some of the knowledge. So, yeah.
So, I love to hear, before we talk about the tips and tricks and all that good stuff, is, what's your story? Why did you want to study the mind and how it works? And, tell us a little bit about the why behind all of
Okay.
this.
So I've got really two main whys that drove me in the direction that I went in. And one main why is that after I graduated college, I decided to study for the CPA exam.
Oh
Now,
my
for
God.
most people, who don't know, the CPA stands for Certified Public Accountant. And at the time, it was one of the most difficult certification exams with a pass rate of only 15% for the first
Wow.
try. And I thought to myself that it might be worth my while to study some learning or study techniques because the time I put up front could help me save more time in the long run. And to my surprise, it really helped. It was really effective. I learned a lot of cool information that helped me almost pass the exam on my first try. I was able to pass
Almost, I heard.
yeah, almost. So I passed three out of the four parts, and the fourth part I missed only by a few percent. And it got me thinking that this intelligence thing was a bit overrated. Growing up, the way I was conditioned from teachers and parents, like intelligence was this difficult thing to strive for, and that if you either you had it or you didn't. And if you had it, it would be very effective for you in life. But if you didn't, it would limit what you could do in life and how far you can go.
Tough luck, right?
Exactly. And through learning some of the techniques, I realized that we can operate just as well as the people that we call genius if we learn the right tools and tips. And geniuses seem to have figured it out on their own, or their brains just naturally work that way.
Mm.
But if we apply that same information or the same systems, we can operate just as well or even better. So that's one part of my story. And another part of it is that as far back as I can remember, I've had a very unquiet mind. I had a lot of challenges around sitting still, focusing. My mind was racing. And when people hear that, they immediately assume or think ADD.
Mm.
And I wish it were only that, because I also had my emotions were kind of cycling and spinning and almost raging. And when people hear that, they assume like bipolar. And I wish it was only as
Oh,
simple
I
as
thought
that.
teenager. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing, because when you're young, this kind of behavior is almost expected.
Right.
And people thought I would kind of grow out of it, but I didn't grow out of it. In fact, it got worse. So after I graduated college, I had this intensity and my mind was spinning. I had so many thoughts going on. I had very little control over what I was doing and who I was. And it was really affecting all areas of my life, personal, professional, as well as academic. And so I really sought to get a handle on this. And this took me on a journey over the last 15 years across 100 countries to really understand what was going on and to be at a point where here I am doing a podcast with you.
That's incredible. Where I'm sure we'll hear a couple of those stories. First of all, I want to tell you, I didn't know we had so much in common. I actually went to school to be an accountant,
Oh,
and at the
wow.
CPA decided this isn't for me. I didn't even sit for it. I didn't even sit for it because I think there's something to that whole idea of intelligent. You either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
I felt, I shouldn't say I was made to feel because clearly I interpreted it this way, but I wasn't a good test taker. So I felt I didn't get that genes. My brother did, right? Both of my brothers, like, were test takers. They, did so well on the SATs. And I think it is so important for people to know that there are tips and techniques, and it's intelligence isn't just also about what you know.
Yeah.
It's about, it's about emotional intelligence. It's about how you direct it. It's about the level of discipline that you deploy. Like, there's so much that goes into. I always say that there's more than being smart, right? You have to have more than just that intellect of
Yeah.
intelligence. So I'm excited that we're going to talk about that today. And I saw in some of your your write-ups and whatnot that you saw a shaman in the Amazon jungle. I mean, do we really need to go to the Amazon jungle to be more productive? Is that what has to happen?
No, we don't need to go there, but I had this mindset that I was willing to try anything and everything. So anything
It's
that came
important.
my way, I was willing to give it a shot. So whatever advice, systems, techniques, and processes that people told me about, I put it to use. But this condition that I had, this, like, I would almost call it insanity because I had very little control. In fact,
Well, I think that
when we talk,
represents 95% of the population today. So,
yeah. And so when I had an opportunity to start traveling, I started doing that. And in my travels wasn't all fun and games. I was really focused on learning more about myself and the mind and why we have these blocks to being able to do what it is that we want to do. And when things like that came up, where I got to see a spiritual healer in Brazil and working with a
cool.
shaman in the Amazon, as well as all sorts of freaky things that didn't seem to work out as well as those experiences, I jumped on them.
So what I'm hearing is, right, and I've talked to a lot of different people about their success stories, and it sounds like if you had the mindset of, well, that works for them, but it's not going to work for me, you'd be where you were before. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So is that the first thing that you say to people? Is
Well, one of the things I've talked about is mindset, because mindset isn't really techniques, isn't really systems, it isn't procedures, it isn't taking action. It's just a shift in thinking. It's thinking about something in a little bit differently.
Well,
And
it can
if
have
we
a
can,
system too, though, can it? Of how to do that?
yeah, that is true. We could. But if we can make some little shifts that kind of drive all the everything else, all of our decisions and actions, that can have a profound effect on our results. And I will be honest, the reason I went down this route is because I did have a mindset that stuff wasn't going to work for me. I had beliefs that my problems were more challenging, and they have been, or they may not have been, but it was very like core of what I thought and what my mindset was. And
Mm.
because of that, I thought I needed something extreme, like something new, something really novel, something nobody was doing. And so I think this was one of the reasons that motivated me to go in this direction. Now, to answer your earlier question, does somebody need to go out there? I don't think they need to, but it's not something that we should close ourselves off to. If
Right.
there are
Well, I
some
was
new
just
and
kidding, but
yeah, and it doesn't have to be the Amazon. If there are
right.
some new and novel experiences that or something that we don't think will work, we shouldn't just close it off. We should be open to stuff that maybe other people aren't talking about, but will be useful for specifically one person. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I see what you did by trying new things and getting outside of your comfort zone, and you're forcing yourself to think differently or to
Yeah.
explore. And there is a technique. It's called breaking the pattern. Right? We have
Yeah.
patterns of thoughts, and so that really makes sense to me. Like, I hadn't thought about it in that context, but now that you said that, all that is a pattern interrupt, is because you put yourself in a new context or a new way to experience something, and then it's breaking the pattern of the old thoughts, allowing new perspectives.
Yeah, I think that you hit it on the head. And one more thing that you had said just now, which I really want to hone in on, was getting out of your zone. Because for success, for productivity, for doing more and getting more in life, we're always going to be faced with something that's uncomfortable and that's new, and that we don't want, an area that we don't want to go. And if we can get into a habit of like coming up against things that we're uncomfortable and still doing them, no matter how or different or extreme it seems, that that can be applied to other areas of our lives. And I would say my success now has been very dependent on my willingness to break out of my comfort zone and do a lot of these out there things that nobody was really talking about at the time, or nobody I knew personally that was doing it. So I didn't have a model to go in that direction. So there was a lot of fear that came up. There was a lot of resistance, and being able to push past that has helped me now when fears and resistance come up in different areas of my life.
You go, bring it.
More or less, yeah.
Well, I think the more we step outside our comfort zone and experience that like you did, the more you realize what's possible, right? It opens up possibility like crazy. And then and it becomes, you're comfortable with being uncomfortable kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And so what do you think is the biggest thing that you learned for yourself too, with your mind and your emotions everywhere? What's the technique that you use the most that supported you the most to get you where you are today?
Okay. So I think you asked two full questions, and I'll try to answer both of them. One is the biggest thing that I learned. So in this journey, across 100 countries, trying all sorts of different things that were very effective, things that were not so effective, but just having the open-mindedness to do whatever. The one thing I learned is that just because I want to do something and I have the desire to do it, doesn't mean I'll be able to do it. So desire does not equate to action. And that was a huge realization for me, because prior to that, majority of the conditioning per se I was getting was, if you can't do something, it must mean that you're lazy or you're scared or there's something wrong with you. And for a long time, I kind of carried this belief of there must be something wrong with me because I couldn't do these things. And then when I started to realize that we have all these unconscious mechanisms and processes that are actually designed to stop us from moving forward, to stop from making progress and growing, then I realized it wasn't there was something wrong with me, but I had some things that was preventing me. And if I could learn about them and how they work, then they would help me move forward. But
no, I want to stop you there for a second, because what came to my mind was you said earlier that you felt like you were insane, right? With all these ideas and everything. And, isn't that like the ideal insane is that our brains are actually working against the very things that we want? Like, that sounds like we're all insane, like, and we don't even know it, right? We're living. And then of course, with all this distraction and stimulation, that we're overstimulated and is probably making it 100 times worse.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what it is. In a lot of ways, we have all these things going on internally that is holding us back. So we ourselves are holding ourselves back, and then we can't move forward to gain the progress that we desire. And we start thinking that there's something wrong and this and all of this stuff. And, it can lead into, if we go down the hole too much, it can lead to thinkings like we are insane.
Yeah.
So,
Depression, right? I mean, we do have a problem today with depression being a really, really big issue, and stress, the level of stress. The World Health Organization has declared stress a worldwide epidemic, right?
Yeah.
So it's really key. So, okay, let's assume that everybody online says, okay, I get it. My brain is working against me. What do I do? Pam, what do I do?
Okay. The most important thing we can do is understand how this working against me, it manifests. Because if our brain is going to hold us back, it's not going to be explicit and be like, hey, Penny, this thing that you're trying to do, it goes against the years of habits that you've formed. So we're not going to be able to do it. Or, hey, Cam, this goal that you set for yourself? Well, it kind of goes against your beliefs about who you are and where you fit into the world. So, yeah, we can't do that.
So that's not going to say, like, Penny, I'm going to tell you the wrong thing. So whatever I tell you, don't listen to me. You mean it's not going to say that?
Exactly. It's not going to tell you that it's manipulating you. And so that it's going to manifest other ways. And there's all sorts of ways that it manifests. And you have to be a lookout. You have to be on the lookout for them. So I can discuss a couple things, some of the ways that it manifests. And some of the more obvious and traditional ones that we have experienced. Number one, we're going to postpone it. So if there's something that we want to do, but our for one reason or another, our unconscious doesn't want us to do it, it'll make us postpone that thing. So we'll put it out for the next day or the next week, or until we finish this, or until we develop ourselves in this area. And then guess what? When the next day and the next week and this thing is finished, we postpone it further. And we're led to believe that we're making the decision to postpone it. But the fact of the matter is, our mind is tricking us. It has no intention in wanting us to do that. And we'll keep postponing it. And so that's one of the more obvious ones that we've come across. But there are other things that will happen. For example, we might all of a sudden get busy. Things that were never a priority or a concern before, all of a sudden become priority and top of mind. And so we'll have all of a sudden have a need to call our aunt that we haven't talked to in 2 years and that we have no desire to. And this need will be very strong and overpowering, like we need to do this now. And what the mind is doing is it's buying time. It's distracting you with all these other relevant activities that aren't related to the goal or pursuit at hand, so it can buy time. And why is it buying time? Because if it buys enough time, we'll forget about our original goal, the original advice that we thought was going to be very helpful. And so, yeah, so that's another way to manifest. And if we can see these patterns, we can catch ourselves and we can realize, okay, there's some resistance going on in our life. For one reason or another, my mind doesn't want me to go in this direction. And then we look at why that is.
And one last thing, just curious, what came up for me too is often we might, those excuses that we come up with, right? There's the postponing and the get busy, and then there's all the good reasons why we shouldn't do it, right?
Yeah.
I find we're really good at that. And one of the common ones is, someone will say, I don't have the time, right? That's in that, I guess, in that busy category. Yeah. So now that I know some of the symptoms, right, and I see them come up, how do I handle it? How do I get past my brain trying to self-sabotage me?
Okay, so there's all sorts of reasons why the brain will sabotage you. And you had asked me a question. So what's the one technique that was the most effective for you? And there's one technique that I find to be one of the most effective to get over many of our self-sabotage. So instead of like going and trying to figure out what happened in my past that's causing this resistance or what's creating this resistance, if we just apply this one technique, it could help us push past many of the blocks that we experience. And the technique is self-talk. So I don't know if many people in your audience know about what self-talk is, but self-talk is more or less statements that you repeat or say to yourself over and over of the changes that you want to have or have happen in your life.
So is that like an affirmation?
More or less, it's another word for an affirmation.
Okay.
For example, if I am, shy and insecure and I want to become a more assertive person, I could affirm statements like, I'm a strong, confident communicator. I communicate my wants, needs, and wants. If people are struggling with memory, they can affirm statements like, I have strong power of memory. I remember anything I choose. And affirming these statements may not seem like it would help all that much, but Penny, let me tell you, it's huge. It's huge. Yeah, and words have a bigger influence on us than we realize. Majority of the limitations and blocks that we have in our lives didn't come because we tried something and realized it didn't work. It came from the words that were spoken to us from the time we were growing up, whether it was from parents, teachers, bullies, peers, right, and even ourselves. And those words have created all sorts of walls and barriers to our lives, and was all through words.
Absolutely. So, and the meaning that we gave those words in whatever the experience was that we had, right?
Exactly. That's even more important because somebody could have said something and had one intention, but we would have, if we took it differently and accepted it as, limiting, if we took it as it was limiting, then it could, create the same wall. And so what I tell people is if it was mere words that created a lot of our blocks and challenges, then we can undo them with words as well, with more positive and constructive words.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing, Penny. The way our mind works, it focuses more on the negative and puts more weight on the negative.
Mm-hmm.
And so the negative will have a much more profound effect on us than the positive. So we need to counteract the negative words with many more positive words. And I think I had read or heard a study that said for every negative thing, we hear or we've accepted, we need 5 positives just to neutralize it. Just to
Okay.
neutralize it.
I've heard that. I've actually heard 3. So 3 to 5 sounds right. You got to overpower that negative so that the positive stays.
Yeah. And so what I would recommend people do, or the people I coach or I work with, is I try to figure out where they're trying to go in life, what they want, why they're striving so much, all that effort that they're putting in, what they're trying to achieve. And then from that, I would create a set of statements, maybe 8 to 10 statements that describe what it is that they're ultimately trying to achieve, and have them repeat those statements on a regular basis. So repeat each statement like 10 times. So for somebody, when it comes to productivity, think about what it is that you're trying to achieve by wanting to be more productive. What end goal are you trying to get to? What do you want to have in life? Or how you want to become as a person?
Ways
And
of being too, right? So I want to be attentive. I want to feel at peace, and be in the flow, and the
right,
ways of being that make you more productive as well, right?
exactly. So we can look at the being part as well and create statements that are positively directed, and repeat those statements on a regular basis.
Mm.
And what I recommend people do is create 10 to 12 statements and repeat each statement 10 times, twice daily. So one in the morning and one in the evening. And that's kind of a lot of commitment. So if people can do it at least one time a day, that's still going to be much more effective than anything else.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what's really great about repeating these statements is that these statements actually go inside our mind. They go into our unconscious and rewire ourselves so we can do the things that we want to naturally. Instead of forcing ourselves, instead of going up against our unconscious blocks, those blocks start to dissipate and go away. And in fact, our unconscious actually creates a motivation and drive for us to act and behave that way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It does. Absolutely. I'm going to have to bring us to a close in a moment. Do you do these on a regular basis, like every day, twice a day?
Yes, I do. In fact, this is the one technique that I have stuck with over
Yeah.
the last decade since I learned about it. And it's the one technique that was really instrumental to my healing. Because I told you I had, some things that were really overpowering where I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
control over. And so how was I able to manage the things I didn't have control over or choice, was to repeat statements that went in and helped change the things so I didn't act in the ways that I was trying not to act in. And my self-talk statements have changed and evolved as I've evolved.
Mm.
When I had certain issues, I had certain statements, but when they stopped becoming issues, or those weren't the areas that I wanted to go in, I changed my self-talk statement. So if there's one thing that I do over anything else, is repeating those statements.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that with us today. And I know you've got, like, we could talk all day, and I would love to bring you back and talk about, some other tips and tricks. So tell people where they can find more about you. I know you've written like 6 or 7 books. So
Yeah.
where can they find more information about you?
Okay, so I've done a lot of writing of books, but most recently I put together an online course called Double Your Productivity in 30 Days.
Awesome.
And this is, as of today, one of my proudest works, because it goes really deep into the mind to help people understand all their blocks, why the mind is holding them back, and the reasons why those blocks are theirs. And then more importantly, they get to learn about how those blocks manifest. We only talked about 2 of them, which was postponing and us getting busy. But in this course, I talk about, more than a dozen more.
Mm-hmm.
And then I give them techniques to help them get past that. And they can I've created actually a special site for your listeners. They
Okay,
can go
great.
to, mindlily.com/penny. And anybody who's listening to this podcast can get 50% off on that online course.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And we'll definitely have you back again to talk about some other, because I know that this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? Is that this is the foundation that a house is built on, is you have to have a solid foundation. If you don't have the right mindset, whatever strategies, tips, tools, systems, they're not going to work, because, you know, it's like a wind comes by and it's going to knock that house down. So if your mindset isn't there, then you don't have the foundation.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, because it's not that we lack systems. Most people know what the systems are and they've heard it plenty of times. It's just that we're not putting them into practice. And
Absolutely.
if we can understand why we're not, then we can actually put them into practice and get the results we desire.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here.
All right. Thank you very much, Penny.
And thank you all for being here, because it starts here. It starts with the mindset, and it starts with you. So, and then from there, then you can put on top all of those great systems, tips, and tools. These are the ones that you want to start with, and you really want to spend that next 30 days. Go and check out this Double Your Productivity course, because it's going to make a big difference for you. And my name is Penny Zenker, and you're listening to Take Back Time. See you in the next episode.